Hey guys, I'm Archie, and welcome to the 8th video in my SDL2 tutorial series. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to render text using SDL. Before we actually get into that, I want to make a slight adjustment to the project. As you can see, I decided to inherit from the window class into the rect class so that we could have access to the renderer. And I realized that's not really a good idea. It just doesn't make sense because the window and the rect are not really related, other than the fact that they share a renderer. So instead of that, I could just make the renderer static, and that's what I'm going to do. So first I'm going to get rid of this public window part. We're going to have a lot of errors in here now. Let's go back into window.h, and let's make this renderer both public and static. So let's change this to public, and we'll go static. Now we can't actually initialize it to a null pointer, so let's just get rid of that. Honestly, we don't really need to initialize it in the first place, so we could keep it like this. Now let's go back into rect.cpp. Every time we see renderer, we will prefix it with window : renderer. There actually is still an underscore before renderer, but I'm going to get rid of that because I only use that for member variables, and this is not really a member variable, it's static. So I'll get rid of that. Now in rect.cpp, let's change that and paste this to wherever we use a renderer. Another thing you'll notice is that before we had to initialize the window class through the rect class, we actually don't do that anymore, so we can get rid of that. That really didn't make sense in the first place. We also don't need this first parameter, which is a window object. So get rid of those. And we have to go back into rect.h and make that same adjustment here. Good, let's go ahead and run it to see if everything still works. And looks like we have other cases. Oh yeah, so within the window class we have to get rid of this underscore as well. Let's run it again. Let's see what this error is. Oh yeah, we don't pass in window anymore when we make a rect object. Alright, let's run it. Unresolved external symbol. Okay, it looks like I actually did need to initialize the renderer. So in order to do that, go ahead and copy all of this. Go into window.cpp, and just at the top, paste it, actually get rid of static, and then right before this pointer, write window : renderer, and then write equals null pointer. And that should fix the unresolved external symbol. Now everything works and we can control the ball. Now we're going to start rendering the text. If you remember, we actually had to install a different library in order to render images, and we have to do the same exact thing to render text. And we have to install SDL TTF. So search that in Google, SDL TTF 2.0, so just click on that. And let's go ahead and scroll down to Development Libraries, and click this Visual C++ one. There we go, it's downloaded. Should be on my desktop, there it is. So if you open this up, and go in here, you could see something familiar. We have the include folder and lib folder just like we do in our project. So first go inside your projects folder, go inside the deps folder that we made, and here are the include and lib folders. So first go into include, move this aside, go into the include folder that was downloaded, and copy over this sdl_ttf.h. There we go, now we have it. Now you can go back into the lib folder that we have, and go back here as well into the lib folder, go into the x86 one, go ahead and take this sdl2_ttf.lib file and drag this in. Now go back into your projects directory, click on the debug folder, and drag in the DLLs that we don't have. I'm just going to drag in all of them and then cancel the ones that we already have. Don't move, and we're good. Now you can close out of this and go back into your project. Click this project tab, click your project's properties, click configuration properties, linker, and then under linker go to input and go inside here, click edit, and we're going to add sdl2_ttf.lib, and that should be a 2. Click OK, and I think that's it. So go ahead and click apply and OK. Now go into window.cpp and try and include sdl_ttf.h. Let's run it, and everything works. So I think we set it up correctly. go inside the init function that we made, and after we initialize SDL image, let's initialize SDL TTF the same. Right, if TTF underscore init takes no parameters, right, equals -1, then that means it failed to initialize. So let's copy this and replace SDL image with SDL TTF. So fail to initialize SDL TTF if it returned -1. Then inside the Windows destructor, now inside the Windows destructor, let's put TTF underscore quit right there and run the program to make sure everything works, and it does. Now we're going to make a text class. So right click on header files, click add, new item, select header file, and let's just call it text. Add that. And then also go into source files, click add, new item, make text.cpp. Go into text.h, and as always, let's write pragma once at the top. And we're going to have to use SDL TTF, so let's go ahead and include that. Include SDL TTF.h. We're also going to just need to use the standard SDL library, so include SDL.h. And we're going to need to use strings for the text. Include string. And let's go ahead and define the class. So class text. First we're going to need a constructor. So let's write text. And it's going to take in the following parameters. First we're going to need a file path which contains the font that we want to use. So let's write that const std string font path. We're also going to need a font size. So let's write int font size. We're going to need the actual text that's displayed. So const std string message text. And we're going to need the color of the text. Const SDL color. We're also going to need a function that displays the text onto the screen. So let's call it that. Void display. And we'll make it const, because it shouldn't really change anything within the class. And let's actually make this public. Then for our private field, we're going to need an SDL texture like we've always used. SDL texture text texture. And we can set it to null pointer. We're also going to need an SDL rect, and this is going to allow us to display the text just like we've done before using SDL rects. So let's go ahead and call it text rect. Lastly, we'll need a function which loads the font. So let's go ahead and call that static SDL texture load font. And it's going to return the actual font texture. So it's going to take in all of these parameters. And now let's go into text.cpp, but first let's go ahead and copy all of these. First, let's go ahead and include text.h and paste the things you copied. All right, first let's work on the constructor. And I'm actually going to split these on different lines because this is not too readable. And let's go ahead and prefix this with the correct scope, like that. Same with the rest of them. Make sure you get rid of static with this function. Actually, let's go ahead and make the LoadFont function first. So the first thing we'll need is a TTF font object. TTF underscore font pointer font equals TTF open font. First parameter is the file in which the font is located. So that's what they passed in, the font path. This is taking in a C string, so we have to do .ce underscore str. And it's also asking for the font size, which they also passed in. Font underscore size. Right away, we're going to check if the font was made successfully. So if not font, then we're going to write std cout, or I should say cerr, failed to load font. And we have to actually include iostream as well. Next, we have to make a surface, just like we've done before. So I'll say auto surface. I may as well just write text surface equals TTF render text solid. The first parameter is some font object, which we made right here. and this loaded the font from a file, and it has a specific size, so we pass that in, font. Second parameter is the text that we want to display. That's this parameter, message text. So let's write that, message text. And since it's asking for a C string, we'll do .c_str again. And the last parameter asks for what color we want to make the text. And they pass that in as well, the SDL color, so we'll just put that here as well, color. Again, we're going to check if the text surface was made successfully. So if text surface, up an exclamation point, we'll do CError failed to create text surface. Lastly, we actually want to make a texture. That's what this function returns. So we'll make SDL texture pointer text texture. And I could have just made this auto as well. You could use auto when you know that the type can be inferred. So in this case, we're setting it equal to what a function returns. And this function, if I hover over it, it returns an SDL surface. So it could infer that we're making this an SDL surface. So the same goes right here. We could just make it auto. And we're going to be setting it equal to a function as well. SDL creates texture from surface. And we've used this before as well. First parameter is the renderer we want to use. And first we need to include window for that. Include window.h. Here we could put window : renderer. And the second parameter is the surface we want to use. So we just made that up here, and we'll pass that in. Text surface. Once again, we're going to check if it was made successfully. If text texture, if not text texture, we could go ahead and copy this message. Failed to create text texture. And now at the end of this function, we can actually free our surface that we made because we don't need it any longer. SDL free surface, and pass in our text surface. And we can return the texture we made. Great. Now let's go back into our constructor, and the first thing we want to do is set the texture member variable of the class, which we have right here, text texture, equals what this function returns, equals LoadFont, and pass in all of these parameters from the constructor. Font path, font size, message text, and color. Next, we want to actually give this texture a width and a height. And there's a really neat function for this, which will generate a width and a height based on the font size and the text length. And it's called SDL query texture. So SDL_query texture. First, it's going to take in the texture we want to apply this to. So that's the text texture. The next two parameters we don't really care about, so we'll leave them as null pointer. And then we have the width and the height. We're actually going to be saving the width and the height that this generates to our SDL rect, because as you remember, when we actually render textures, we're always dealing with the rect. And the rect has the information about the width and height. So we're going to pass in a pointer to our text rect, .w for width, and the same thing for the height. And now it contains the corresponding information for the width and height, the dimensions of the text. Lastly, let's make the display function, which is very easy, and actually take some parameters, which I forgot to include. We're going to need an x coordinate on the screen, a y coordinate, and the renderer that's being used. So we'll do SDL renderer. Go ahead and copy all of these and paste them into the display function here. And one thing I would actually kind of like to modify is that this function should be taking in a render as a parameter as well. So let's go ahead and put that in here. SDL renderer. Copy that and then paste that into here. And same with the constructor. And make sure to pass in the renderer into the LoadFont function, because we just added that. The reason why I'm doing this is so that this function can be called anywhere throughout a project in the case that there are different renderers. So let's put that in here instead, and let's make the display function. First, we want to let our text rect know about these coordinates that are being passed in, because every frame we should be able to expect that the coordinates are going to be changing. And the text rect is what holds that information, where it is on the screen and the size of it. So we're going to say text rect.x equals the x passed in, and text rect.y equals y. Now notice we have an error here because this is a const function and we're trying to mutate our member variables. To fix this, I'm going to call this member variable mutable. And now we can actually modify it. I still believe that the display function fundamentally doesn't really change much, so that's why I'm going to do that. I could have just gotten rid of its constness, but I'd rather just do this in this case. And next we're going to use SDL render copy as we've done before to get it onto the screen. SDL render copy. First we need the renderer that was passed into the function, so renderer. Then we need the texture, which is our texture member variable. We don't need to worry about this variable, which I've talked about before. And then it's also asking for a text rect with all that useful information. And it wants a pointer to it, so we have to pass in its address. And I think this is actually it for the text class. That looks pretty good. And if we run it, we shouldn't get any errors. We don't. So let's go into main and include text.h. Let's go ahead and make a text object. And let's just look at what we have to pass into it. First we need a renderer. So let's pass in the window renderer. So window : renderer. Next we want the font's path. Let's go ahead and actually get a font. So let's say I want to make it Arial. If you actually go to your Windows bar, which you can't completely see right now, but if you go to Windows bar and just search fonts, there's a fonts folder right here that pops up that comes from Control Panel. If you click on that, it'll give you all the fonts you need. And let's say I want Arial. Arial is right here. I'll just go copy. Go into your project folder, which contains all the source files. Go into the res folder, which is meant for all the resources. And go ahead and paste that font. I'm going to get rid of everything besides normal Arial. There it is. Go back into your project. So it asks for the path. So let's go ahead and write res/arial.ttf. We're going to need a font size. So let's say I want to make it 30. For the message, let's go ahead and write rendering text. And for the color, let's make it red. 255.0.0.255. And inside here, we need to draw the text. So we'll do text.display. And this actually takes in the coordinates where we want it to be. So I'll just do 2020, top left of the screen. And it needs the renderer, so I'll do window renderer. Let's go ahead and run it. As you can see, we have our rendering text in red on the top left of the screen, so it works. And we can still control this ball and move it around the screen, so that still works. I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time.